Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Faith and Finance Forum presented by the Catholic Finance Association and hosted by Aquinas Wealth Advisors. Happy New Year, Merry Christmas. And we're going to kick off season three of our show with a very special guest, a return guest to the program, Chris McMahon, founder and CEO of Aquinas Wealth Advisors, founder and CEO of McMahon Financial, or MFA Wealth, I think it's called now, right,
Yeah.
Chris?
Yes, sir. I'm happy.
Welcome
Well,
to the show again, Chris. How are you?
good, John. God bless you. Happy New Year to you and to all the listeners. Happy New Year. And I hope everybody has really God's blessings with them as they go throughout this year.
All right, awesome. We got so much to cover today, including and especially your new book, Chris. Congratulations. Published later this month by Sophia Institute Press. It's going to really shake things up, I think. But let's start with a prayer, shall we? Father, Son, Holy Ghost, amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy
Holy
Mary, Mother
Mother
of
of
God,
God, pray
pray
for
for
us
us sinners,
sinners now and at the
now
hour of
and
our
at the hour
death.
of our death.
Amen.
And on this feast of the Epiphany, Saints Gaspar, Melchior, and Balthazar, pray for
Pray
us, the
for us.
Magi. Yes. Well, Chris, here we are at the beginning of 2025. I know 2024 was a big year for you. Aquinas Wealth Advisors grew and expanded at breakneck pace. And you've become a familiar face on TV, especially Fox Business Channel, the Maria Bartiromo show, the number one pre-market business show in America. You're on there every week now, right?
Yeah, it's really a great thing. Maria's such a wonderful person. Really, to be a co-host of that program has been a blessing. And we talk about faith. Talk about faith a little bit. And Fox itself has put out that pretty, that series on the saints, which is amazing. And I think they're the mainstream media, John, to me, and I know Fox is, on the more conservative side of the mainstream media, has been really willing to talk about this stuff more than ever before. And also, frankly, I've seen even some of the other programs I appear on, some of the, CNBCs and Schwab networks and these other programs are now in podcasts. They're willing to talk about this stuff, which is a wonderful sign. People were kind of afraid for a while. I think they're getting a little bit more, comfortable, which is beautiful.
No, that is beautiful. That's great. And to be clear, it's Mornings with Maria, every morning on Fox Business Channel. And Chris, you're on there. It seems like weekly. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I usually am there once a week from 6 to 9, and really get an opportunity to learn about, talk with the thought leaders in politics and certainly financial markets, and really just kind of everything that's going on, and as I said, getting a chance to be with kind of Maria and some of the rest of the team there. Cheryl Casoni's wonderful, and there's some great folks that are really driving that enterprise, and I'm proud of it. The other day we got a chance. I don't know if you saw it, John, but there was the egregious act by Amazon Prime. They cut the entire scene from It's a Wonderful Life when George Bailey was thinking of ending his life, and then Clarence showed him what his life would be like had it not been for him and how what an impact he had on everyone's life. He was uniquely designed by God, and I thought it was great. We got a chance to talk about it, and there's very few things I'm expert on more than It's a Wonderful Life. So it was just I laughed. I said to myself, here I am commenting on my favorite movie on the biggest show in business. How did I get here? I have to pinch myself, but I feel, as I said, lucky to be there for sure.
Oh, by the grace of God, of course. Chris, so many viewers of this program have been following Bartiromo since the mid-90s. Of course, she was famously the first journalist on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, really built up CNBC in the 90s and the early 2000s. She was their top talent. And now, of course, her Fox Business programming, her programming on Fox is so popular. Now that you've spent a little bit more time with Maria, can you just give us an anecdote of what she's like in person?
It's funny, John. I know you've been so thoughtful about Catholics at the Shore, our conference that we put on every year, and I've asked Maria to come down this year. So I'm getting a little ahead of myself, right? I'm saying I don't know if she can do it, but she's so gracious. The point is, you see people. It's funny in that world. You see people that are that want to treat you like a freshman on the senior bus. I always laugh and talk about, and Maria's the opposite. She engages with everybody. She's aware of everybody. It's her world. Yet at the same time, she is, I would say, a thoughtful woman of faith. She's very involved with the Al Smith dinner. I'm sure you know that, and she's a woman of faith and a woman who I think is amazing. I don't know if any of the listeners may not know, but she says it publicly. But she's the primary caregiver for her mother, who's in her 90s. So here she is, a star, and could be visiting her mother once a month in some you know beautiful facility somewhere on the Hamptons. Yet it's actually Maria who's with her mother. I'm going to guess 10 hours a day taking care of her mom, which I just think speaks about the kind of person she is.
What a story about her character. That's awesome, Chris.
Yeah.
And keep up the good work on broadcast TV. We love watching you. So a big focus of our conversation today, Chris, is going to be your brand new book that's coming out this month in just a couple weeks, Faithful Finances, Six Steps to Establishing a Catholic Financial Life. I believe this is your first big book, right? Do I have that correct?
It is. We've done some little things in the past, John,
Mhm.
little guides, but nothing like this. Where it came from, John, I think I've been talking with you about this journey. Is initially we were just normal investment people and having some success, and they used to tell us in the investment world, don't talk about politics and don't talk about religion. And as we were not talking about those things, a lot of these kind of themes were hijacked by a relatively small portion of the progressive left, where all of a sudden if you were not accepting of these values that were really contrary to our faith. I think a lot of our people feel that. They feel that pressure. And for a while, we kept closing our eyes saying, maybe it'll go away. Maybe it'll go away. Maybe it'll kind of equalize. And I think the good news is it is kind of equalizing now. Still too extreme, but it is equalizing a bit. But during this whole kind of push to the left, all of our people were saying, geez, I can't mention that I don't want to support these things that are contrary to my faith, contrary to my values. And even if I did want to do it, I don't know the process by which I could do it. And that kind of got us started on this path of starting Aquinas Wealth Advisors and then writing the book to give people kind of how to, John, how to build a table. Here's the steps: get some wood, get some nails, let's get started. And it's been a great process, because to put it pen to paper, we're hoping to transform the financial landscape. We're trying to empower. These are talking about 50% of the people in our country are people of faith who do not want these things in their certainly in their world, and they don't want to support these things in their investment world in any part of their life. John, I think we're in a position now where we can kind of take a breath and say, wait a second, this isn't hateful. We want to love everybody. Everyone's created in God's image. We love everyone. However, if our views are important to us, what is the process by which we can implement a plan that is consistent with our faith, that when we go to meet our maker, we can say, I did everything I could. I did everything I could to support these values, which even, that have been kind of instilled on us from God Almighty, frankly.
And again, the name of the book is Faithful Finances: Six Steps to Establishing a Catholic Financial Life. The first big book out by Chris McMahon, hopefully the first of many. Chris, you touched upon a little bit just I guess the political dynamics that have been affecting the corporate world in recent years, particularly ESG and DEI. Some of these phenomena, which I think are more discredited now than they once were, but they're certainly not gone. I mean, they're still hanging in there. Contrast for us, I guess, your vision of Catholic finance and Catholic corporate governance versus these kind of new age phenomena, perhaps best embodied in ESG and DEI.
Isn't it amazing, John, that at one time we said, let's hire the best person for the job.
Yeah,
Let's make the company, let's make these companies profitable as long as they operate within inside the law. Let's make them profitable, okay? And then let's return those dividends to the shareholders, because in America, John, we all know, different people have different views, which makes our country wonderful. So if somebody's a radical progressive, to some degrees, give them their dividends, and they can support causes for which they think are reasonable. Well, somewhere along the line, it got to the place where board chairmen were thinking to themselves, they were thinking, wait a second, people care about what I think. And it was really interesting when we saw, remember, John, when we saw uh, the Roe versus Wade being struck down, which is a
yeah,
wonderful thing, in my opinion, wonderful.
yes,
And you had CEOs stepping forward saying, okay, from now on, we're going to pay $4,000 for our employees to travel across state lines.
crazy.
And crazy, and not mentioning a word about the people that have the courage and the strength. I know you're involved in the pro-life movement. Molly and I are up to our elbows in the pro-life movement as well. The idea of saying to someone, we'll pay you, yes, we will, to go, terminate this pregnancy, and encourage you to do so, not just pay for, encourage you to do so. And at the same time, not give even any support at all. If someone has the courage to have the child, for daycare costs, anything like that, it just is bananas, and it's just absolutely bananas. Something, John, that happened, I'm looking here, December 11th, it was such a great thing. It was the Fifth Circuit Court struck down the NASDAQ board diversity rule. I remember talking about this a couple of years ago. People didn't believe me. NASDAQ came forward about 3 years ago, 2021, at the peak of craziness, and said, unless you have someone who's a transgender or someone who identifies openly in these communities of the LGBTQ community, you can't take the company public. I mean, think about that for a second. How un-American is that? Certainly, by the same token, we would never want to discriminate against anybody,
Of
of
course.
course, to be on one of those boards who happen to be in those communities. We're of the impression you don't ask them if they're in those communities. We don't care if they're in those communities. If they want to provide value that advances the company and allows to follow the law, that's the way it should work. And I'm so grateful that it was the Fifth Circuit Court, who's not super conservative. John, you know better than I, but I
Yeah.
mean, they were able to strike it down and say this just doesn't make sense. But these rules were being implemented all over the place. And this was the ultimate in reverse discrimination on the highest levels. And how many DEI hires, unfortunately, have we seen that have resulted? We could point our fingers to say have resulted in either just ridiculous decision making. Think about some of the advertising we've seen over the last few years, or some of the I think about this, John. The when you look at some of the scoring that there's the corporate equity index, quote CEI score. This score was a big deal for a very brief time, where it was this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy where these folks that used to run Planned Parenthood developed a scoring system to determine how woke you were. And are the big three, if you remember correctly, State Street, Vanguard, and BlackRock came out and said, unless you subscribe and get a good enough CEI score, we're going to have you fired as the chairman of a company. This was blackmail at its highest. This is why companies like Target and these were selling. They weren't interested in selling bathing suits, transgender bathing suits. They were interested in getting a high score so they wouldn't lose their jobs. And I think what's beautiful is the majority have said lovingly and kindly, or at least at least half the country, this isn't acceptable to us. And we want to have a process where we can be heard. And it's okay, every voice can be heard, but our voices were being completely drowned out, which is, it's part of our responsibility as Catholic men and women, of course, to lead and to speak out and to live our faith out loud, I think.
Yeah, I mean, look, all we're saying is that the judgment and the evaluation of a person's quality should be not skin deep, right? Not based on superficial characteristics. It should be
Absolutely.
about merit, how hard you work, how much character you possess, your experience, your intelligence. I mean, all these things that can be developed, and that's the road to true liberty, right, Chris? Because those things aren't reliant on your color or your gender or your sexual orientation. Those are things that can all be improved and invested in through your own determination and hard work. Anybody can get ahead in that kind of world, right?
Everybody, John, as you said, I think said in a different way, is created by God Almighty.
Yeah.
Everyone is made in His image. Therefore, everyone has inherent dignity, and to somehow reduce their any person's dignity to some label of one form or another reduces God's. It's getting into God's sovereignty. That's not our place. Our place is to hire good people and not blind to all of these attributes that you were talking about before. Blind to that. We know the character of the person, the resume of the person, and the person's ability to do good things. And none of that is spoken about in this idiotic ruling. So I'm so delighted to see this industry, John, this DEI industry. You'll see a few people are hanging on to it, but many universities are saying, "Wait a second, we overstepped." I had an interesting conversation with someone. I said, how are you guys going to modify at a university your approach to this stuff? How are you going to modify it given kind of the things are kind of swinging back more towards the middle? And this person was dumbfounded because they'd never been challenged before. In the last 7, 8 years, they've been kind of, just allowed to run wild, to report directly to the president, have a big role, have a big department. And you looked at it, and they were developing, John, I'm sure you know this, they were developing certifications and go to a 3-day conference in Florida or California to get the certification. And then having a governing body, they created an industry based on this falseness, this basically un-American and certainly and I think it does disservice to the people, the quality people that no matter where they are, no matter what minority interest or majority interest they're in, it did disservice to all of us. And I think it's wonderful. This particular person was dumbfounded. I don't think we're going to modify it all. And I said, well, I think you need to that cannot be your answer. You need to think about this. And you need to reposition and say, certainly there were some good ideals, I think, John, in some of those DEI initiatives. There were some good ideals in there, and cling to those good ideals and roll it back into an HR function. Why on earth was that brought out as its own? John, there was companies producing DEI annual reports in addition to their stockholder annual report. Think about that for a moment.
Wow.
Spending millions of dollars producing a report to say, look at what we've done. We sent 75 people to this conference, and we sent people to training, and we told our employees are inherently racist or sexist or whatever it is, whatever it is. Now realizing that didn't impact profitability at all, didn't impact the quality of the company at all, and I think ultimately didn't. What's also interesting, John, didn't ultimately impact the statistical hiring ratios in the company. It was all
Interesting.
kabuki. It was kabuki theater, John.
Wow. Okay. So faithful finances I know I was going to touch upon that, but I know it's also going to focus on one of your other great passions, Chris, which is aligning independent people, families, investments with their faith, with their values. And you've been in this space a long time. You're one of the real pioneers in faith-based investing. Talk
Yes.
to us a little bit, Chris, about, kind of how you got into this and how you got so excited about it. Because you were serving Catholic families and other families with Christian values or traditional values, and you discovered that they were investing in all kinds of stuff that they were opposed to, and you really wanted to find a solution to help them fix that, right? I want just explore that with us. Yeah,
Well, it's interesting, John, because people do would want this
yeah,
inherently want, even though they never articulate it. At the
yeah,
beginning, they didn't have to articulate it because companies did as we described. They just paid
yeah,
dividends, and you did it. But they became very socially active about 12 and 14 years ago. Well, what we realized was there's only a couple of mutual funds out there you could buy that would, oh, I bought, there's some good guys out there selling mutual funds that call them Catholic mutual funds, and some of them are pretty good, right? But to a large degree, the consumer had to take their word for it that it was Catholic.
yeah.
And it would only represent maybe 10% of their total portfolio. So they'd say, okay, I bought this fund from these guys, and they bought the fund, but there was still 90% of their complete portfolio was absolutely in violation of everything that they stood for. And they had no mechanism by which they could check that. They would ask their advisors, and oftentimes their advisors would be people of faith. And they would say, well, the people I use are very faithful people. Therefore, I assume that my portfolios must be in alignment with that. The reality was these people worked for firms, they're employees of firms that would not allow for any mechanism to back check some of this stuff around, and these are still huge issues, John. How much pornography am I supporting? Pornography is one of the most pervasive, dark, evil things in the world. And I could read you a quote a chairman wrote a few months ago that was just so disheartening, John. One of the companies that bought a company called Pornhub. So a company bought it and said, we're excited to work with our new acquisition because we believe these creators will be able to really achieve bottom line results while expanding on creativity and helping their in a safe, and there was another term they used. It was just so offensive to me. The idea that producing pornography, people used to be embarrassed about producing pornography, John, right? And I think that's appropriate because it's dark and it's evil. And we talk about the same people that talk about pornography talk about human trafficking, and it's the same thing. If it's not the same thing, it is one and one A. There's no question about it, right? There's a big company out there, and John, that's where it started for us. There was a big company out there, sorry, it sounds like a hotel company, and I'll have to think of it in a moment, but it's a hospitality group. The hospitality group. I'll think of the name in 1 second, and it implies that how many mutual funds and ETFs, and how many churches, how many dioceses, how many individuals own this stock in the ETF? Thousands and thousands of them, not realizing that this hospitality group, all they operate is two things. They produce pornography for the internet, and they run strip clubs. They call them gentlemen's clubs across America. And if you looked at the history of these companies and human trafficking and all the violations and the illegalities that have gone on at their clubs, and again, these good-meaning people don't have any knowledge, didn't have any idea they were supporting this. We said, how can we help them understand that, identify it? We developed some technology that goes in to anybody's portfolio that wants it. It tears it apart, and it shows them all the stuff they're supporting exactly. We call it the Faith and Finance tool. It's available at no cost to anyone who wants to do it. We've had many people do it. We've had many of those people, some of those people just live with the information. Other folks come back to us and say, Aquinas Wealth, would you like to manage our money? And John, it's interesting. We're really having some growth there, working with individuals across the country and with institutions across the country. But what we found was there's people still yearning, saying, this isn't enough. I want to make sure I'm 100% alignment with to the best of my ability. Bishop Caggiano, who's on our Catholic Advisory Board, who I admire greatly, says, some level of participation in this stuff is very difficult to sort out, but let's do the best we can. And I think that's such a good way to think of it. But folks are saying, I want to eliminate this from my planning as much as humanly possible, not only my investments. And John, there are trillions of dollars that we as Catholic people invest and support. We tell dioceses every day how many abortions they paid for in the previous year. Can you imagine this? These people have no knowledge that they're doing this, and their financial advisors are saying, oh, no, we checked for you. Because what they learned, John, was if they say we checked, the diocese or whoever it is will say, okay, then I think we're okay, not realizing that they have no capacity, no tools to really check. I was with a group the other day, John, that said, and their advisors were there. And the advisor said to me, well, if you're going to buy government bonds, the government pays for abortion. So really, I said, is your point then we shouldn't endeavor to eliminate as much of this as possible? It shows you kind of the hubris of the advisors where they're saying, well, you can't avoid it, so just get the highest returns you can. That's not an acceptable answer, and that's why we started the company, and now that's why we wrote the book, to give people the guidance and the step-by-step strategy roadmap to get as close as they can.
Wow, I love it. And Chris, let me ask you this. Is there any trade-off in terms of return on investment performance for going towards a faith-based Catholic line portfolio, such as the one offered by Aquinas Wealth Advisors?
It's interesting, John. I'm coming up on a very big and very dark birthday for me in a couple of days, which makes me laugh. I can't believe it. I was 35 a minute ago, and then we're all meeting down at the Jersey Shore in a couple of days to celebrate my birthday, and I feel blessed to be here. There was a time I would tell you that performance would be my number one rule, and many of the people who come to our company say performance is not my number one issue. Alignment is my number one issue, and now at this age, I'm willing to. And I've had other people say to me, I'm willing to give up performance in order to be in alignment with my values. It's that important to me. Certainly, institutions tell us that all the time. The good news is this: we have not seen that delta yet. In the time that Aquinas Wealth Advisors has been operating, we have not seen, a minuscule difference in performance in these faith really heavily screened portfolios compared to the non-faith aligned portfolios. And actually, it was 2023. I think the faith one slightly outperformed. In 2024, the secular one slightly outperformed. But it's good. The good news is, the Lord is with us, and I think we've had performances that are absolutely in line with that of this market in general.
Chris, what's your dream with Faithful Finances? I mean, what do you want this book to accomplish, like for those that read it?
John, I think we started with a small ambition. We wanted to change the world, right? You know, which is maybe reaching for the stars. I think we'd like to do three things. We'd like people of faith to understand that they are empowered. They are empowered. They're not helpless because we felt helpless for a long time. That'd be the number one thing. And have them understand they can have power to take back the control of these things, and their voice will be heard. And I can give you, there's great examples, by the way, of people voices being heard, which is wonderful. Secondly, we'd love to really come back to people. A big part of this book is our estate planning and how to have our faith aligned estate planning and what we're doing. And not only our investment planning, our estate planning, every aspect, our risk management, every aspect of our financial life. But I'd also like to really, at the end of this, John, see our Catholic institutions elevated in the eyes of the Catholic community, the broad Catholic community. We've lost sight of the need to support Catholic culture after we're gone. And philanthropy is a big part of that. Somewhere along the line, we started thinking of the United Way and these other, I don't mean to condemn the United Way, but these other charities have some significant value. The reality is there are religious people praying, for you and I and everyone else listening right now, in monasteries across the country and cloistered convents across the country. Those people, we have an obligation to help support them. And one of the ways we can do that is through effective estate planning, which really ultimately doesn't even cost us or our descendants significantly at all. And I think I'd love to see an uptick in philanthropy to Catholic institutions. And then I'd also like to see a more broad conversation about this in the public square, which I'm excited about. I think the idea of us talking about this in public and saying, why would you think it's appropriate to put these investments or support these businesses that you previously would have been embarrassed to tell people? Can you imagine in 1975, a chairman of a company going to a shareholders meeting and telling everybody, great news, guys, we bought Pornhub? Can you imagine that? Of course not. Because it would be despicable and reprehensible. And people, as members of the communities, members of faith, we need to kind of, I think, not be sanctimonious, not be holier than thou, because we're all flawed, we're all broken, of course. But I think I'd love to bring it back to where we can say, gosh, let's think of this thing. Let's look at things, John. I think that's the bottom line. Let's have the world look at things through the Judeo-Christian traditional lens that started this country. And not, again, it's got to be kind, it's got to be considerate. But I think at the end of the day, if we started making decisions based on that, we're in much, much better shape.
Awesome, Chris. We're on with Chris McMahon, CEO, founder of Aquinas Wealth Advisors, author of the brand new book, Faithful Finances, available everywhere books are sold later this month. Chris, we'll get back to the book in a minute, but I just want to segue for a few minutes here and let the listeners and viewers get to know you a little bit as a person. So many of us have seen you kind of run around the Catholic stuff and now, on TV all the time. But yeah, let's just explore your background a little bit. Where you're from, what was your family like, early life, anything you want to share with us about
Sure.
where you grew up or who you are as a person.
Absolutely. So, I was unremarkable as a young person, and I was probably still pretty unremarkable as I sit today. But my wife, really, until I met my wife Molly, when I was 19, I was really unremarkable in everything, academically, athletically, every possible way. Thank goodness she went to Duquesne, and I was the last guy admitted, and she was the first person admitted. Thank God she was there. And since that time, Molly and I have done great things. But it's interesting, John, you mentioned it. I was working with a friend who's struggling with alcoholism recently. As I said, I'm having the 60th birthday, John. That's a big number. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
But I'm having my 60th birthday, and I realized, and my mom, thank God, is still with us. So she was over for dinner just last night, which was beautiful. My mom raised four of us alone. My father was a kind of an alcoholic and really a mess, unfortunately. And I pray for him now that I'm a little older and have frame of reference. But I called my mother probably a weekend within the last 3 weeks after Christmas. I said, Mom, my friend who's an alcoholic, I realized something. Nothing can be done to help him at this point. Tried everything, nothing can be done. Until they're ready to go. And I thought it was interesting that my friend made still to this day makes every interaction very difficult. Giving a card to the valet, ordering a cheeseburger, any kind of normal interaction that you and I have every day with this person at any moment could turn into a catastrophe. The normal mechanisms by which our society work do not apply to folks when they're under the grip of this evil, right? And I called my mom. I said, Mom, I'm the youngest of four. We're all a year apart. Everyone's done fine. Everyone's done great. And I love my brothers and sisters. But I said, Mom, I just have to thank you. I've never said this before. I talk to my mom all the time. I said, Mom, I never thanked you for getting us out of that situation with our dad. I can't imagine the chaos that it caused. Just the absolute train wreck that our life would have been had my mother not had the courage to do that. She divorced my father. She raised us alone. We all went into school, and we're all out here kind of, I'm the youngest, and I'm 60. So they're all a year apart. My brother's 64, the oldest. And everybody's done great and has beautiful families. And so for Molly and I, we have 5 children. Unfortunately, they all live in New York City right now. I know I talked to you about that a lot, John. So I'm up there a lot. But they're doing wonderfully. They're starting to kind of get married, and that phase of our life has started. Molly and I became super involved. We started a maternity home here. We were really inspired by the Sisters of Life and spent so much time with them. I always say that we're kind of, they might call us stalkers. We're deeply connected to Sisters of Life. And we've spent a lot of time in Mexico City with the Sisters of Mary at Girls Town. That's been a very impactful thing. That came to us through Legatus, we were very involved with for a long time. I was fortunate to really get to know Tom Monahan extraordinarily well when I was the vice chair of the board for 5 years. So I really got a chance to see him, and I know you've had a lot of time to interact with him as well in your career, and to know Tom and to see him and to understand what drives him has been a true blessing for me. And as a result of that, we've kind of, as you said so accurately, John, got to kind of know the Catholic circle and know the people out there. And I realized something. I enjoy spending time with these folks because it's so aspirational to see these people. My friend, a good friend, a priest, who Tom Coons in Pittsburgh, his dad just passed away, and we were at the funeral on Saturday, and it was amazing to me because I read his obituary, the dad's obituary, and he was a big lawyer, and he had 7 children, and I don't think they had 2 words about his legal career, even though it was extraordinary.
Wow.
And I read and I said to his son and to his wife, who was still there, Mrs. Coons, I said, Mrs. Coons, your husband's obituary is absolutely inspirational to me. It's what I want, the kind of man I would like to aspire to be. So we're trying to straighten up the bumps, spend a lot of time with these religious, the Catholic endeavors, but at the same time trying to grow these businesses. And really what we're trying to do, Molly and I, particularly with Catholics of the Shore, which is a conference we run every year in Stone Harbor, and with Aquinas Wealth Advisors, our goal would really be to kind of transform the landscape to the degree we can, and then ultimately support some of these these endeavors that are super important to us.
Chris, thank you for being so open and vulnerable with the story about your parents, and your mom does sound like an absolute saint. What an incredible person, and she clearly conveyed those values to you as well, and the kind of father and leader of your family you are, you and Molly together. You mentioned Catholics at the Shore. Why not explore that a little bit more here? I think we're in our fourth year with Catholics at the Shore. It's a big deal for you. Why did you start that, and what do you hope to accomplish with Catholics at the Shore?
I think John, and we've been partners in this the whole time. So appreciate your partnership. Molly and I were sitting there one day saying, we spend time in Stone Harbor, New Jersey. Molly's a Philly girl, and at one time Stone Harbor was kind of the Philly, the getaway for folks in
Yeah.
Philly. It's gotten more national than that now. There's a lot of folks from New York and Pennsylvania, all over the country that go there. We said, wow, this is such a beautiful place, and so many people don't have access to conferences. If they're not in Legatus, they don't have the Legatus conference. And certainly the Good News Conference is great. It's a great conference. But if you don't have access to that and there's only 1,000 people that go to it, perhaps we can kind of tap into the group of folks that would love to be part of a conference like this. And because of all my experience with these various organizations, we knew a lot of the wonderful, wonderful speakers that are out there who need to be heard more. And we said, why don't we get these folks to come down in Stone Harbor? And we thought we'd keep it intimate. We keep around 150 people. Some of these things have kind of gotten a life of their own when they're so big that you can't. I remember being at a conference and they rushed the speaker in. He was a priest, a wonderful priest, and after the end, they rushed him out like he was the president. I said, "That's really not right." The priest, right? People want to, they want spiritual counseling. They want their confession heard. They want to just talk to him, right? And they want to do it too. These guys generally want to do that too, but they're limited, right? So I think what we did is we started this with the idea of bringing kind of secular leaders together, church leaders, and great speakers, and really have a community where we can really, dig deep. And the fruits have been amazing. Dig deep, probably get closer to their faith. And then really also, there's people that come that are mad, John. They're mad about their faith. They're mad at the church. They're mad about the scandals. And they just say, okay, well, I'll come down, but I'm gonna tell them, I'm gonna give them the business when I go there. And respectfully, but I'm gonna give them the business. Well, we've had a great experience with people coming in, realizing it's just through all of our work, John, this is something I've realized. No matter how mad somebody is, they're mad, but they're more hurt, right? And
Yeah.
they're right below the surface. If you scratch below the surface, is that wanting, that yearning. We're yearning the same thing. We want to believe. We want to understand and believe that we were created by God. We want to understand that we are unique, and there's something more to this life than, I don't know, having a vacation home, or something more than being a scratch golfer, or whatever the heck's driving folks right now. I think people are wanting so much to understand that God is in charge. There's a plan in place. Our lives on this earth are short, but our lives in heaven are eternal. And I think we're trying to help turn people on to that. And, Father Mike Schmitz is coming this year. Father Mike's just such a wonderful, serving man of God. And we have a bunch of folks like that, great secular leaders. We have some of the largest leaders on the, with large stock market kind of folks that have done unbelievable things in the secular world, that also have made decisions to kind of turn back to God a little bit. And I think it's just a beautiful place. A lot of adoration, a lot of confession, a lot of spiritual guidance, a lot of fellowship. Because did you ever feel like you're on an island? You see that too, John. People feel like they're on an island.
Yeah.
Wait a second, there's 250 people here. They're just like me, or they look kind of like me, and we can talk about this and connect. And I think that's what we're trying to do there, Catholics of the Shore. So we really encourage people to look at CatholicsoftheShore.com and come down. I think it's May 14th, 15th, and 16th. And it's a beautiful, beautiful event that we're hoping to just really, blow the roof off of it, which we're excited about.
Yeah, again, registrations are available for Catholics of the Shore 4, May 15th through the 17th at Stone Harbor, New Jersey, Icona Avalon. It's on the website. You got to be there. It's going to be great. We have Father Mike Schmitz coming to headline this year, right, Chris?
Yeah, Father Mike's an amazing guy.
Yeah.
And, I said to him the other day when I saw him, I said, look, if you talk to 8 people or 80,000 people, you're doing the same thing. Humble, servant of God. What he did at the Eucharistic Congress, that's something else, John. A lot of folks, the Eucharistic Congress was amazing. A lot of folks weren't able to go. Well, Father Boniface Hicks, who's unbelievable, is coming to Catholics of the Shore as well.
Wow.
And he's such a deep thinker. At the same time, he's so relatable. And I think having these people and having their availability, certainly Sister Mary Gabriel from A Sister of Life, who we love, is one of the just our most impactful people we've ever known, is coming. And it's a bunch of lay leaders. I think we have this Navy SEAL lined up. I got to make sure of it. But this Navy SEAL who won the Congressional Medal of Honor, which is amazing,
Wow. That
and
is amazing.
turned his life to is a devout Catholic. What an interesting, what an interesting story that would be, right?
Very cool. So, Chris, by the time most of us have gotten to know you, you were already, established in the business world. When you and I met, you were already, top 40 or 50 independent financial advisors in America, and now you've done all this cool stuff with like Legatus and the media and all that. But I'd love it if you would give us an anecdote from, I guess, earlier in your career when you were just getting started out. When you were a young professional and you and Molly were married and kind of building it up. What was it like for you? When all that stuff was, over the horizon, when you weren't sure you were going to be successful.
Yeah, I didn't believe it, John, at all. I just was hoping for. I remember hoping if I could make $3,000 a month, I could pay for the more. Molly and I were married at 24. If I could make $3,000 a month, I could pay the mortgage and pay for all the stuff, the groceries. And we had 4 kids. We had 5 of them pretty early. We're 16. Our youngest is 27. So, so pretty young, and we had no money. And I remember thinking to myself, "Oh my goodness, I don't know that I'm worthy of success. I don't know if God intended success for me, and I don't know. I hope for mediocrity, John. I hope for at least stability, right? And that was my hope. And think about this for a second. I was talking a few minutes ago about my friend Tom, Father Tom, whose dad passed away, and Father Tom's dad passed away. Well, go back 30 years. Go back 30 years. So maybe even 35 years. I was 25, and he was probably 50, and he just passed away. And I only spoke to him in my life 2 or 3 times, even though his son and I are very good friends. And his law firm, I remember I was a young guy running around the city trying to sell insurance and Roth IRAs, which, there's probably two, I don't know if there's harder things to sell when you're 25 to have credibility. Perhaps those are the two hardest things. And I spent a lot of time at this law firm. And, obviously that's when you're a young lawyer, there's probably nothing more annoying than someone coming around trying to bother you all the time. So this person thought, I know what I'll do. The young lawyer, I'll go to the head of the firm and say, make this guy stop coming here. So it was very funny. I think about this man who they eulogized on Saturday, saying he and his wife, think about this, John, is aspirational. I meant that when I read his obituary. He and his wife prayed their first rosary together on their honeymoon and prayed the rosary every day for their married life for 62 years. Can you imagine?
Wow.
Beautiful, beautiful. What an impact for his children to see his mom and dad on their knees every day, right? It's amazing. But what happened was this man, another senior partner, pulled me in. It scared the heck out of me, John. I thought they were going to just yell at me and say, never come back here and stop bothering our people and so forth. And they just kind of, they were just like gracious, kind, 55-year-old guys and said, look, it's so nice to meet you. Look, I understand what you're trying to do. And when I started out, I was doing the same kind of thing in the law that you're doing here. And he said, this particular person, if I were you, I'd probably, leave them alone and just kind of slow down a little bit as you come up here. Just be aware that there's a little bit out there, but good luck and best of luck to you. And for the next 30 years, they would say hello to me, hi, Chris, when I come up and greet me and walk me out of that office like I was a trusted client of the firm, right? And I think to myself, that's the opportunity. And I walked out of there thinking, boy, these men are so kind, and this is, and they're treating me like not an equal, but certainly a person of value, which I'm not sure I even valued myself at that time. And I thought that is the way I want to treat people. Whether I see them in the media or I see them, wherever they are. Wherever it is, you see examples of people treating other folks extraordinarily well, and also very, very dismissive of other people, and reducing other folks. And I love the way Jack was his name, elevated me that day, and that stayed with me for a long time and taught me that that's. And I see that with so many other leaders too. That's what we want to see. That's how I want to operate, right? Because some of the stuff that we use to distinguish ourselves, we know it's silliness, right? We're just kidding ourselves that we have more value than other people. And I think we have to see that inherent dignity that everybody has. And, I think it's serving the poor has been such a good lesson for me in that way. I don't know that I would have done that 20 years ago. Molly and I now spend a lot of time doing that because it's helpful. It reminds you how blessed you are. And being grateful, I think is something I'm really working on. I'm trying to wake up every day and I'm trying to say out loud 3 things I'm grateful for. Right. And I think that's been a driving force for me. And one other thing I've been doing is I've been trying to do five or six P's, and I try to do them every day. The letter P, and I try to pray, and I think of that as going to daily mass. And I try to be productive, and I try to move the ball forward in my business. I try to do push-ups because I try to do a couple hundred push-ups every day. And it's funny, Tom Monahan still does his push-ups, which is
Yeah,
amazing.
sure does.
Yeah, I try to do the Peloton every day. I try to take a walk, and I use the word promenade for that. And I try to be positive. And I think if I do those six things, I say, did I live? Did I have a good day? And that's helped me. I'm not a deep thinker, and that's why this helps me. That's why developing this book and this system, I wrote along with Greg Dukes and Trey Davis, who worked with me, and we developed this system of helping people develop a faith-aligned financial plan. So when we wrote together the book, Faithful Finance, and our friends at Sophia Press couldn't have been better. Just great partners to work with on this. We're trying to say to ourselves, how do we help people that are busy align and take these steps that they know are important, but they seem so hard and so heavy? And we're saying, no, let's take it one little bite at a time, just like eating that elephant. And I think over time we can all get there.
Mr. Monahan would certainly appreciate the catchy acronym of the six P's. He would approve of that for sure. He's big into that stuff, as you know.
I still do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu too, John, which is funny. And I said,
Yeah.
and I can't figure out a letter to put a P for. So I've been saying pugilistics, like boxing. With that, I know it's not boxing for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but so I got to figure out a word. When I get it, I'll add the seventh P to the thing.
Oh, can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah.
Chris, those of us that know you can't imagine, Chris and Molly McMahon without, your strong dedication to the faith and, vibrant practice of the faith. I'm just curious, has that always been the case? Would you share with us a little bit about your journey and the waxing and waning that it certainly has seen?
Yeah, I mean, I was in college. I was almost completely disconnected from the faith, secularly Catholic,
Yeah.
and even today, I wouldn't call myself. I'm very involved with Catholic. I don't. I'm open to going to the Latin Mass. I haven't done that. I'm not. I went to Duquesne. I'm wearing. It's hard to tell. I'm actually wearing a Duquesne sweater to see this D.
Nice.
Still involved there, and Duquesne is where the movement started. John, I'm so sorry. I was going to make a point here with the Holy Spirit, being baptized in the Holy Spirit,
Oh,
charismatic movement.
wow. Yeah.
Charismatic movement started at Duquesne, and I have not really been connected to the charismatic movement at all. But when our kids were going through parochial Catholic schools, and we would go to church on Sundays, but what happened was, as our children started to grow, we made a decision that we were not being the best examples we could be, and how could we kind of tighten that up? We joined Legatus as one step, thinking, oh, this will become the Catholic date night. Won't have a huge impact on us. Our kids are getting a little older, meet some nicer people. We went on a few of their trips, and those trips were wonderful. We had a friend in Pittsburgh who just recently passed, Kathy Howe, but Kathy had a miraculous healing at Medjugorje 30 years earlier. She was leading trips to Medjugorje for 30 years. I've told the story before, John, but when I was at a Legatus meeting, Kathy was telling the story as the president of the local thing, and I thought, oh, gosh. This kind of, my friend is Sheila Daffy. I'm not sure what she's going to talk about. Well, she stood up and talked about how she'd been leading trips to Medjugorje, was diagnosed with a rare blood cancer. And during her last, she believed to be her last trip, this 30 years ago, on Apparition Hill, she heard Our Lady say to her, Kathy, my son has cured you, go home. And Kathy Howe went back to Hillman Cancer Institute in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And her oncologist, who I met, said, your cancer is gone. Your cancer does not go in remission. Your cancer doesn't go away. I have no explanation for this other than God. And when Kathy told that story, and it was overwhelming to Molly and I, and she said, I think you guys are being called to Medjugorje. So we went to Medjugorje, and it was magnificent. We took our two younger kids, and that started us on this kind of path. We became very connected to the Sisters of Life. And as I said, opened a maternity home here in Pittsburgh, which I'd really encourage anybody to do. It seems like it's a heavy lift, but it's amazing how your friends will line up. John, a quick story about that I think is so wonderful. We've been a little busy lately. And
Real quick, Chris, what's the name of the maternity home? Let's get that on the record.
Mary's Place.
Got
Mary's
it. Thanks.
Place. So Mary's Place in Pittsburgh. So Mary's Place has been a blessing, and our friends have come right in and stuff. Well, one of our friends' daughters is now running. She's the executive director, and she's lovely. And she said, we're going to do our phone-a-thon next week. And I said, I can't be there. And all these people are friends, right? All these people are friends that we've been beating up for years, and they come. And she said, well, we'll do it without you. And I thought, okay, perfect. I'm glad to do it. But if you want to do it without us, that's wonderful. Well, anyway, my point of it is, we're all replaceable. We raised $130,000 that night at our phone-a-thon. Our friends couldn't be any kinder. People are lining up. People are excited about it. People want to talk about that, John. That's something that's not gone away. The dignity and the protecting of human life, particularly the most vulnerable among us, is something that all of us want to talk about. That's why it's critical our investments line up that way, our planning lines up that way, and our philanthropy lines up that way. We have to look at where we're giving our money. And if we're giving our money to organizations that in turn give money to these radical abortion organizations, which many of them do, we have to stop that, because we have to say we have to support not only individuals but institutions. We have to stop supporting us. So that's what happened to us, John. Legatus, Medjugorje, meeting the Sisters of Life really had a huge impact on us. And now we're doing, now we're kind of open.
It's an awesome journey, Chris, and it's just so genuine and sincere, and it's been really a blessing to be a part of it in a very small way over these past 10 years you and I have been friends. Let's get back to the book, Faithful Finances again. So, just walk me through if I'm, just a normal guy with an IRA, I have a salaried position and, I give my $1,000 a month or whatever to it. And, I don't really know what happens after that. What should I do right now today to make sure that my investments are aligned with my Catholic values?
Yeah, first of all, I would first of all just go on the Aquinas Wealth Advisors website. There's no obligation. No one even knows you did it, and you can load in your user ID and password for your 401k. It'll give you a report of everything you're supporting in your in your in your investments. And it's so interesting, John. In the old days, people had one job and they kept it forever, right? Well, now you meet these 35-year-olds. They have 6 little 401ks that add up to $150,000, but they're here and there, and they say, "Oh, I have it over here at this company, this company." So I'd suggest those people, they aggregate them at some point with some, pardon me, faith aligned financial advisor. But you got to back check them a little bit, because some of the ones that'll have the greatest names, they'll say, we're, Word of God Financial. You'll say, great, what are the tools that you use to determine what my investments are? They'll say, oh, well, we're efforting that way, right? So yeah, the great news is with technology, there's so many bad things about technology. But the great news is it has created complete transparency. So the first thing I would do, I would get that faith and finance score. The second thing, if I was using an advisor, I'd go back to them and say, tell me the process you're going through to determine if I'm supporting things like, and I think we could just go, John, I think we'd start with abortion and pornography. Those are 2 great ones to start with, because they're 2 of the darkest evils. And I think, even the Pope had said that he said that certainly abortion, the protection of the most vulnerable among us is number one. And I think that'd be great. And I think this whole idea of pornography, it's been normalized so much in our society, right? Well, I have my fan space, or fans only fan space. People say it with pride, right?
Well, the money is crazy, Chris. I mean, some of those OnlyFans people are making the same as professional athletes, right? It's wild.
It's exactly right. And
Yeah.
for completely dark and sad reasons. And I think if you look, for example, at the statistical, gosh, the life expectancy of these folks, these people, is just so low, because there is, no matter how you slice it, there's an inherent just, complete disregard and it's self-loathing going on there. No matter how you say you're empowered,
That's
that's
right.
just not worse, right? So those people don't deserve our condemnation. I think that's so interesting. If we do that, we have a tendency to do that. I'm embarrassed. I do that sometimes. I start talking about the evils of abortion, and I forget to say, Chris, these people, everybody has suffered abortion. Not everybody, but many, many people. I think it's 1 in 3 women now, 1 in 4 women certainly have suffered abortion, and 1 in 4 men have suffered abortion. An interesting story at Mary's place. One of the girls just the other day came down, and she was lovely. She was kind of a little more together than what I'm used to. And I met her, and we were having our Christmas celebration. Actually, excuse me, it was Thanksgiving, our Thanksgiving celebration. And I said, it's nice to meet you. And I said to him, like I introduced myself to many people, I'm Molly's husband, right? Because they all know Molly. And I said, I think that baby's coming tonight. She said, oh, not for 2 more weeks. I said, I don't know why. I just feel the baby's coming tonight. And she was just very funny. She wants to be a nurse. I really enjoyed talking to her. And by coincidence, the baby came that night. So it gave us kind of a special connection. And I was asking her about the father of the baby. Tell me about the father of the baby. And she's, well, he's a young 28. He's not aware of what's going on. He doesn't want to be a father, wanted me to have an abortion, lives in Florida, more worried about his fitness level than his responsibilities to his family, that kind of stuff, not running from his responsibilities of family. I told her the line I said to my wife has always said to me, thank God, my wife has always said, don't judge the man by the boy.
Mm.
Right? Don't judge the man by the boy. And I'm really thankful. My mom met me when I was 19, and I spent a lot of time as a boy, John.
Yeah.
A lot of time as a boy. And I'm so grateful that she's bared with me. Well, as I saw her yesterday, she said, Chris, here's my son. And he was beautiful. The kid was beautiful and cute and funny and big and fat and not sleeping at all. She was exhausted, but she was so happy. And she said, next week, Dad is coming up because he wants to meet his son. And I would like to tell you one more, John, if I could.
Please.
Yeah. So about a year and a half ago, we were talking about getting residents at Mary's Place, and it's a learning process when you open a maternity home. You don't know what you're doing, right? So you try to instill rules that would be acceptable if you're running a wealth management firm, but not if you're running a maternity home. These people are a lot more distressed. Well, after a while, we were saying, how can we get people to come in here? And we have some beautiful sisters from Nigeria that really help us run Mary's Place. And they get it from the beginning. They've seen people in their worst circumstance. They understand how it is. So they were kind of, I love them, going around us a little bit and having people come in when they knew no one would be there to reject them, which I thought was so smart, much like Chris Bell. I think you know Chris Bell, who
Yes.
runs the maternity homes throughout New York. Chris and his wife are amazing, and they've really been kind of an example to us of what you can do. The Good Counsel Homes that Chris runs. Chris, I always said, if you brought a woman if a woman came to Chris Bell's home, who's a pyromaniac, homeless, had matches and some gasoline, he'd say, put her over there, but make sure we have water nearby in case something. That's how he thinks. And I admire that so much. And I said, we called it Mary's Place because we want to think, how would Mary, Our Lady, handle this, right? How would she handle this? Would she say, fill out the form, or would she say, here, sit down, have some tea, and just breathe for a minute, Anyway,
Yeah.
when a woman came in one day when I just happened to stop by, and I thought it was unusual because normally our normal kind of interview folks weren't there, but the sisters, of course, were. And I laughed because I said, sister, you told her to come now. She said, maybe, because she knew she could get her. So the woman came in and she was distraught. And the sister didn't ask her where she was, didn't ask her a series of questions and ask her to produce 3 forms of ID. She kind of gave her maternal love, right? She talked to her and gave her some maternal love. The car was still outside, and I went outside because I thought, well, I'll say hi. You never know who's dropping these folks off, John. You just don't know what they could be. And there's some dark stuff out there. It could be, anything, right? So I went out to the car, and the guy rolled the window down. The windows were tinted, and he rolled the windows down. I said, hi, he looked kind of rough to me. And I said, hey, I'm Chris. I'm a volunteer here. How are you? Just real friendly. I pride myself in my affability. And he looked at me, and I thought he was going to say, something. I don't know what. Right? I thought I had to use those jujitsu skills, right? And it's funny. He started crying, and he uncontrollably sobbing. He said, is she going to be okay here? Is she going to be okay here? I have to go back to New Jersey. I have to get a job. I have to set up. I got to get a job. And I realized all his belongings were in the car. Okay. And I thought to myself, this guy cares deeply for this woman. He's very upset he has to leave her here. And I said to him, where are you from? His name was like Jose. I said, are you Mexican by chance? He said, yeah. Maybe. And I said, oh, Molly and I just got back from Mexico City. I said, Our Lady Guadalupe? She said, I do. I said, we were amazed by the whole thing. So we talked for a minute. I didn't realize sister then had come out and she was behind me. So sister, who I love, was behind me. And we were telling sister, calm down the religion stuff. We don't want to punch these people in the face. A lot of them have no religious stuff. And we've got images everywhere and statues. And, so let's just try not to make people, first day in 6 hours of mandatory chapel or something. Right. And I said, well, why don't we, the sister's from Nigeria. You're from Mexico. I'm a financial guy. How the heck did we all end up here without, certainly it's the intercession of Our Lady who brought you here. And she's going to be fine here for as long as you leave her here, right? There's a God's plan. Look, if you wonder if God's plan is working, look, you're here. This is wonderful. Look at this beautiful home. Look at these, this is all great. Couldn't be better in terms of where you are. I said, why don't we pray to Our Lady and thank Our Lady for just getting us there, right? So I laugh because I pray that we all pray to Hail Mary. And at the end of the Hail Mary, sister says to the guy, but don't worry, we're not that religious. She was saying, he's just, meaning me. He's just a religious wacko. We're not that religious, which was so funny. Well, she stayed in the house for 3 weeks and he sent for her. 3 weeks, which is a pretty short stay. We have people stay much longer. That was about a year and a half ago. About 4 weeks ago, we got a note from her. And I got to remember John, you might be able to help me with this. One of the archangels. There's 4 of them. One of the names I'm not as familiar with. I'm sorry. It's not Gabriel or Saint Michael, but it's one of the other ones. They named the baby after him. Okay, because we had an image of that archangel in the house, and the woman said that those 4 weeks were so healing for her and so helpful to him. And now they're married and they're starting their life together in New Jersey. And I thought, what an unbelievable blessing to be a tiny part of that life journey. And when we all do it together, it's not a heavy lift, John. It's not a heavy lift because everybody's doing it together, which is beautiful.
And we have Raphael and Uriel are the other two.
Thank you, Uriel. Exactly. That's they named the baby Uriel. Thank you so much for that. So that's exactly they
And
named the
honestly, I
baby.
forgot it too. I just looked it up real quick.
No,
So
no, it's
yeah,
fine. But they named the baby, and I thought, how lucky are we? How lucky are we
yeah,
to be a small part of this?
yeah. No, lucky is the right way to describe it. That's awesome. Chris, I want to ask you about something that I'm tracking a lot more kind of in my work. I think you are too. You know, for s- for so many of these past few years in the faith-based investing world, it's been about keeping out of bad stuff. You know what I mean? Don't not giving money to, abortion, pornography, human trafficking, gambling, et cetera. And that's very important. I think that's appropriately the focus. But it seems like more and more people are talking about engagement with the corporate world, educating, talking, when necessary and appropriate, exerting pressure to
Yes.
get these publicly held companies to, abandon these activists and in some cases evil practices, just get back to, neutral business performance like it used to be. Give us your analysis of the outlook of engagement and hopefully just a restoration of the old corporate culture, which was apolitical and generally avoiding of evil practices.
Yeah, and John, as we build out this ecosystem for Aquinas, we're trying to build out a credit card and really have it kind of like, the nerd wallet idea where you have everything
Yeah,
in one place. That's really our ultimate goal for Aquinas, your one stop for not just your financial plan, your investment plan, your insurance planning, your credit card, your banking relationships. That's where we're heading with this. And it's interesting. Two things happen, right? John, I think you've said this before. We're throwing out, we're throwing out very good in pursuit of perfection, or whatever that
yeah,
expression is, right?
yeah,
Because I've seen people do that. Oh my gosh, I want to make sure I sort out. I want to make sure that I get landmines out of my financial plan too,
right,
which is aspirational and wonderful. But
yeah,
it's harder to do that. Or I want to make sure I get fracking. Someone said to me the other day, fracking. Well, I live in Pennsylvania. A lot of people that I trust and respect don't think fracking is in any way inconsistent with our faith, right? It's a beautiful, in a lot of ways, people think it's a beautiful thing
right.
where I live. So what we first want to do is not let's take it one step at a time. And let's start with the most egregious ones. And then secondly, I would also look for positive markers, which there are now, which is wonderful. There are companies winning awards for alignment with their employees, funding education, paid time off from maternity. And it's harder to see that stuff. It's harder to find it. So you want to make sure companies you're using to help you with that research are kind of up to their elbows in it. And there's two or three that are out there now. But I'm always nervous, John, when I see people that are in our space that say we are definitively the best ones at this, because it's a moving target. It's moving every day. And we're spending a tremendous amount of money on technology and people and infrastructure, and we're missing things. So when people stand up with it's, kind of supreme confidence saying we are the number one as weeding out this or that, it's funny. It's too difficult to do that. And I think where a lot of that comes from is some of these people just used to saying that because they used to have no one else who was even in the space, perhaps. So I would say I would say that we have to look for positive things as well. And I think you can do some of that research yourself, googling. What are their employee practices? What is their how have they been seen on their maternity stay? What kind of child care at work are they providing? What kind of education are they providing for their employees? What is their attrition rate of employees? That's an excellent signal, an excellent sign. Some of these companies with low attrition rate are doing everything they can to elevate employees and make them more valuable. So I hope I'm answering your question there, because I think it's kind of a mixed bag of those things I mentioned.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see if, kind of I guess the way DEI is used to create corporate action to, get it like a good score for, the things that DEI and ESG score against. If that same thing could just be like, turned towards, practices that are, supportive of the Catholic Church's teachings, or just what's right, not necessarily a Catholic impulse, but like you said, good maternity benefits, just respect for the human person, appropriate leave, I mean, just like, I don't know, stuff like that. I wonder if a new, I mean, let me ask you this, Chris. I'll phrase it as a question. Would you support that kind of like, revised scoring regime that directed towards that, or are you, opposed to that kind of thing altogether?
No, we're working on it kind of on our own spin on that. Actually, we're going to come out
Interesting. Okay.
before and say, what is your, FAS? We're calling it faith aligned score, right?
Yeah.
But it's John. It's so interesting. The Vatican just published I think it's an encyclical, but don't hold me to that. I'm not as good on my papal, uh, um, materials as I should be, right? The things they produce. I've read it 3 times on faith aligned investing. It just came out recently. I actually knew a couple of guys that went to the meetings in Rome, and they just had a meeting in London the other day.
Yeah.
And I get to the end of that thing and say, wow, there's not one actionable item in this entire thing.
Yeah, you're
It's
talking about
actually right.
Mensurum Bodum. Yeah.
Yes, sir, exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's worth reading
Yep.
because it's inspirational in a way and talking about the dignity of the person. But there's no action items. There's no steps a person can take. That's really so. It's really even though we're going to the same place, it's the opposite of Faithful Finance, our book. We're trying to say here are the steps you can take as an individual or an institution to make sure you're aligned with your faith. And at the very least, you'll be significantly more aligned with your faith at the end of this process than the beginning. And it could be 180 days from now, and you can feel completely differently. You can feel empowered and online and on track.
Hey Chris, while I got you, let me just do a quick lightning round here as we wrap up our time
Sure.
together. 2025 is starting. Obviously, the big story I would say is the new administration taking office in 2 weeks. The Congress is already in place, sworn in last week. What's generally speaking your outlook for markets and how 2025 is going to look?
We're bullish on the markets for a couple of reasons. One, if you take the Magnificent Seven stocks out of the S&P 500 over the last 3 years, it's only averaged about 7%. So people say it's been astronomical. The reality is it's been very focused, and we see that kind of pushing out and broadening. When it broadens, I think the equity markets have room to run for the next 24 months.
Yeah. Closer to home, U.S. Steel and Nippon deal was struck down by Biden. What's your analysis of that?
President Trump was saying he also is against the deal, which I disagree with
Hmm.
completely. Everybody I know, including former chairmen of U.S. Steel, have said to me the same thing. It's not a matter of national security. The stuff they make isn't that real. And if Nippon Steel doesn't buy them, they're going to ultimately go out of business and invest $1 billion in them. That's the only, and right now, that is the best and only way to save jobs. They should push that deal forward. I think President Trump can be talked into it, honestly.
Are you more excited or concerned about artificial intelligence?
Way more excited about it. It's amazing what can happen. I'm concerned about people who do certain jobs, right? So, but that's technology's always been right a blessing and a curse, right? Cruelty, what is it? Is cruelty to the wolves, or mercy to the wolves is cruelty to the sheep, right? And I think the same thing is true here. I think we have issues with it, but I think it's amazing what it can do.
Chris McMahon, the author of Faithful Finance's 6 Steps to Establishing a Catholic Financial Life. It is available everywhere books are sold later this month, on or around January 20th, if I recall. Be sure to grab your copy. I'm excited to get mine. Catholics at the Shore is coming up May 15th through the 17th in Stone Harbor, New Jersey, Icona Avalon. Tickets are available now online. Chris, any parting shots good for the order?
Yeah, John, I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate everything you're doing, and I appreciate everything the Catholic Finance Association is doing. There's so many good things going on, and I'm so excited to kind of continue to work with you on those things.
Well, Chris, onward and upward. I'm sure 2025 will be another great year for you. Happy to walk with you and call you a friend as well. So, God bless you. This has been the Faith and Finance Forum presented by the Catholic Finance Association, sponsored proudly by Aquinas Wealth Advisors. It has been for years. Thank you, Chris, for that. And we'll see you around campus. God bless.
God bless you. Bye bye.